I'm going to bring in my hand cannon here to show you a quick little demo on preloading your feed tube before you load a pod. As I will mention that if there is a gap in your pod or in your feed tube, the next ball that is fed through the pod will have an opening that can accelerate the paintball into either your bolt or the paint ahead of it and end up breaking in your feed tube, which is what you do not want. Trust me, it sucks. So, to preload your feed tube, take a handful of paint, and this all dictates on how long your feed tube is. You just hand load paint through the stopper one by one. Seems tedious, it is tedious, but it is essential. Okay. So one thing that comes with using a cue loader is if the feed tube is either too short or too long, you can still get chops. If there's a gap in there for half a paintball to be seated inside the feed tube, when you remove or load in a new pod, you can chop a ball there as well. So this is one thing to look out for. To correct that, all you have to do is remove a section of the tube, shorten it, lengthen it, whatever you need to do, just to make that spacing. So as you can see here, that is spot on. There should never be any chops with this. If you set it properly, it'll take care of you, and it will work well. The cue loader pod is pretty simple. Cap comes off, internal housing, external shell, internal. We have the spring, and inside we have the screw that feeds the paint, and the guide itself, and then the top cap. So when it comes to spring care, I guess, if you don't use these for a long period of time, you want to unwind your spring. Over the years, I think I used it at a pre-wind of 15 turns, maybe 16, depending on the strength of the spring. For pre-winds and for unwinding, you take this cap here where the screw is, you can pull that down, and you can see that the spring is unwinding, loosening up its tension. Just kind of slowly let it off. So that is relatively unwound. So then you can put it all back together and then put it away, say for the winter or the time that you're not using it. When you have to wind these again, over the years I think I used it at a pre-wind of 15 turns, maybe 16, depending on the strength of the spring. For pre-winds, you take this cap here where the screw is, you can pull that down. When you have to wind these again, I found that the best way was to use the winding handle from your loader, popped out of the shell. I have a lot of these. So you put that in the cap, and then you pull it down, and then you want to rewind the spring. It rotates this way. So to wind it, you want to wind it the other way. So for that, you're winding it clockwise. So it's one full rotation, two, do this 15, 16 times. Once you have pre-wound your spring, you can set this aside. You can either load this directly into the pod. I find that loading the external first, trying to get this relatively center, and then rotating until it catches. Line up the top, drop your spring in, feed the locking tabs into the slots. They need to be seated before you can put the cap on. Once this is seamless, you know that it's all the way. So when it came to loading, when you order a Q loader, you get various lengths of hose, this reservoir, as I mentioned before, the winding cap. This is annoying. Don't bother using this. You can dish this. The method I found best for loading Q loader pods is a clear agitator hopper. Really any hopper will do, it just needs to be clear so you can see inside the channel. The important part is being able to see paint consistently feed into your pod while you load it. So I'll do a quick demonstration. Need your paint, need your pod. Once the pod's loaded in, the best way I found is to cradle it in your arm like so. So the hopper is up top. Load your paint. Like so. Close it. So, when the agitator is running, it'll help feed the paint in. Since it's clear, you can see when there's a gap. When gaps start in the pods, there are open spaces between the paint. When that happens, that means that when the paint is feeding and that gap is getting to the end, once the gap gets there, there will be an open space in your feed tube, which then the next ball that's loaded in the pod will slam into the one ahead of it and end up breaking, and could possibly break in your feed tube or in your chamber. And that's where people usually have issues. Now with this thing on, it should agitate and keep the balls consistent. So when it slows down, I'll slow the speed, give it a shake until some more load in. So there you go. Fully loaded Q loader pod. Quick, easy, simple, no fuss, no muss. It's done. So you probably have one left here. You can just touch that. And there it goes. So that's it for the loading. That's it for the pod care. But yeah, so that's my quick little video on how I take care and load my pods. So if you do have a Q loader and you didn't like it, give it another shot and you might not be so disappointed.